And I think the question for us is like, was the return on investment there? Are we getting the cultural engagement? Are we getting people into the office? I don't think any of us want our employees to come to the office because we tell them they have to.
Space shapes behaviors. Behaviors create culture. And it's culture that drives results. It's why we're celebrating a century of success with business furniture. Thanks for being here as part of our 100th year anniversary and this special podcast with host Gary Dick.
Welcome to the More Than a Chair podcast. I'm Gary Dick, and I'm excited to be hosting this special series celebrating business furniture's 100 years in business. Today's episode, we are diving into how space impacts a company's culture. And with me today is Tiffany Sauder, the CEO of Element 3. It's a full-service marketing consultancy in Indianapolis. She took over the company in 2006, has really transformed it from a small creative shop into one of the fastest-growing marketing consultancies in the Midwest. Recently, she tackled another big project, creating her office space and work environment to keep up with the changing work culture and meet her team's energy to continue to grow towards an inspiring future. And Tiffany, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, as a marketing CEO, your job is really to, in many respects, transform brands and tell a company's story. Your story, your company's story, your personal story are both really interesting. Let's talk about you, Tiffany. How did you get into the marketing game?
Yeah, it's sort of like, I feel like marketing found me a bit. I grew up in a really entrepreneurial home. Kids tell stories of like throwing baseballs in the backyard with their dads, and my dad more like threw balance sheets at us.
Wow.
And so financial literacy was a big part of my upbringing. My dad was an entrepreneur from when I was really young. And so I really was steeped in business. It's obvious now that that's where I would end up, but it's actually not necessarily what I knew I was going to be doing. But on that journey, I think I started to understand that business really is such an important part of community. If you want to create change, business is a thing I knew how to do. And I think that that's why I'm so excited to be an entrepreneur. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had in my career and love the chance to be able to tell the story of Element 3 a little bit today.
Yeah. So you began kind of in the brand arena, right? Or talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So marketing finding me. I have a degree in finance, and I've always been really passionate about business, particularly the forward-looking part of business. Finance, I always like that side of kind of accounting because it was about figuring out what have you learned from the past and how do you take that information and be smarter about the decisions you make going into the future. And as I began to get exposed to marketing, I realized that same thinking pattern actually plays out in marketing. When you put together a marketing plan or a brand strategy, you want to go first learn by what has happened, what has been, what does the data tell you, what does market research tell you? And then how do you organize that in a way that you get really smart assumptions about this is how we think people are going to buy, this is what we think people want, this is the way we think we should spend our money, this is the tech stack, like all those things. And then you actually execute and you loop back, figure out what happened, compare it against what you thought, and make better decisions the next time. So I think the world of finance taught me that thinking pattern. And when I started to learn and understand marketing, I started to see, wow, I can take fundamentally kind of the way my brain's been wired to think, lay that on a new subject. And marketing is a funny thing. We like all present ourselves as marketing experts, but right. I feel like there should maybe be a professional asterisk beside it because it is a world that changes a lot. And so there's always a lot to learn. There's always a lot of forward momentum. I've always loved the idea of compelling story. And using that in the context of business is where I think I, sort of found my way into brand.
So Element 3, describe Element 3. Would you describe it as, non-traditional may not be an accurate description, but you're kind of a different marketing consultancy. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think that we all think we're unique. We
Right.
folks in the marketing world. So I don't know that I have total credibility on that. Yeah. But what we care a lot about doing, and I think the purity of the craft when you look at marketing it is our job, and this is what we're passionate about at Element 3, is to find culture conscious leaders, those people who actually are in the game of business because they care about the stakeholders, they understand the financial responsibility of creating an economic engine that enables growth, both in the people and in the business, that it plays fair in the marketplace, that has products and services that do good, meaning they deliver on their promise, and they have character, value-focused leadership that wants to do more than just build a business, but build a better community. Like when you find culture-conscious leaders who care about that stuff to come alongside them as a brand strategist and to help them take what is innately, intuitively inside of them and help them birth that story intentionally, that is like the purest form of brand, is when you get to come alongside, use your talents of our talents as brand strategists of curating that story out of the leader, of helping them make what's intuitive to them explicit so that others can understand it and tell that story, and the momentum can get bigger, and then turn that into a performance marketing plan that helps them fuel the economic engine that furthers the mission and the brand. This is the purest form of marketing. And when we sat down and said, what do we really want to do? Like with our talents, and what do we really want to leave in the world? There's a lot of muck in the marketing world. You can cash a lot of checks adding to the trash heap that in places becomes marketing. A lot of disposable things, websites that don't get updated, messaging that is not actually true to the leader, but you're being asked to put lipstick on a pig. Like all of that does exist. And I think in some ways we want to go back to being purists about it and knowing that it does start from the leader and the person that we're being asked, the story we're being asked to tell. It has to become more than just the story of one. And that's what we seek to do. So we say we transform brands and generate demand, but not just for anybody, for truly culture conscious leaders that are striving or currently in a place of market leadership. Transformation is a big part, as you mentioned, big part of what you do for your clients, but also Element 3 has gone through a dramatic transformation. You have grown from literally a company of one to more than 40. How have you done that? What's really fueled growth? Yeah, I mean, we went up to 70 and now we're down to 40. So, there's a lot of tales in there that we could tell probably different podcasts. So I just need to make sure that there's some intellectual sort of honesty here. It's not been a straight path, but I'm super grateful. I'm a growth junkie, and I think everybody who owns a business, you've got a decision to make. Does it keep getting bigger or doesn't it? And if it does keep getting bigger, why? Because at some point it does become about more than just your own financial achievement if you're going to keep going, because it keeps getting hard every time you have to reinvent the company, get to a next level of complexity, bring in new people, change the culture because now everybody, all the things. And so I had to get really honest about why would I keep making it so hard? And I got back to the place, and this is the purpose of Element 3, is that if our purpose is to foster growth in people and business so that they can change the world. If we really I believe the mechanism of business is a training ground for us as adults to teach us conflict management, growth, leadership, communication, all the things that we need to create great communities. I think business is a training ground for that. And so if we believe that, why would we stop at a number? And so we have learned a lot. It has not been a straight path. Those scars, I think, have brought wisdom to our company as we've grown. It's brought a sense of humility, for sure, as we've sort of gone on the path of growth. But, growth is not an easy journey. It's glamorized, but it takes a lot of, I think, digging deep and honesty to go on it in a way that's pure. Transformation. What are you seeing when it comes to transformation for your clients, in particular in this post-COVID world that we're now embarking on? Yeah, transformation came to our front door, our doorsteps as leaders in every facet. I think it was particularly challenging because we did not have 2 extra months or as leaders, it's not like we could say, okay, I've had 2 months to process this and now I'm going to go and share this experience with my employees. We were processing it, digesting it both personally and professionally at the exact same moment. as all of our, I mean, think about every other transformation that's happened in your business, Gary. Like you planned for it, you probably caused it, you knew it was going to be hard, but you sort of had a chance to mentally prepare for this is the change management that's going to be required. And with COVID, we were all naked as leaders. And I think in many ways, our own values were brought forward in a way that we couldn't control. And I think that was good.
Yeah.
I think honest leaders were brought forward. I think that transparency came forward. And I think the transformation that's happening in our cultures is a downstream impact of that.
How has it all changed the way you do business? Are there concrete examples or things you can show to how doing business has changed because of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we're talking about on Business Furniture's podcast here. I think one really obvious one is our space, the way we think about it, the role it plays in our work. We were a on-premise only organization. Everybody drove to work in the morning and everybody drove home, at the end of the day. And while we thought about our space being important for collaboration, we did not think about it in the same way. I wasn't competing with home. The last time I was building out an office space. And as we had the gift of our lease expiring, like call it 75% of the way through COVID. And so we had the advantage of kind of seeing how we believed our employees were going to come back, what that was going to look like. And we were fully remote for the most part, for the better part of 12 to 18 months. And so we learned we could do a lot of things remotely that we didn't know that we could. And so I think that dispelled a lot of myths for us. We're now a player's choice environment. So if you want to come into the office 5 days a week, we'd love it. If you want to work from home 5 days a week, for the most part, that works. We've got a few things that we sort of identify as kind of loosely mandatory. But the environment has changed, like physical environment has changed. And I think the expectations, there's no longer shiny surfaces, bright lights, highly reflective, like clinical environments from an office perspective. When we were designing our space, I really felt like it had to be this intersection of welcoming professionalism, but also this sense of comfort like home without it being home.
We'll talk about that because you did your own space, moved in, I think, was it last fall? Moved into your new space in Carmel. There's so much going on in Carmel. It's amazing to see the change happening in that community. But talk about that whole process of designing that space, the thought process that went into that. You touched a little bit on it there, but what was that process like?
Yeah, I would be interesting. I don't know the stories of a lot of other business owners, but the inside of the space we considered as much as what was going on outside and around the space. So you mentioned we're in Carmel. The idea of this sort of live-in, work-in, play-in area, as we are getting more blurred lines between this work from home, work the hours that work for your family kind of environment, this accessibility. And so I wanted to be in a place where our spouses and kids could easily meet their employees for lunch, where you could go and grab a coffee with a friend and not have to get into your car. You could go walk during your one-on-ones so that you could move your body and not feel like you were stuck in an office space. Like that sense of place, our office turning from an office to almost more like this community center feel, was part of the way I wanted to transition. So sort of outside looking in. And then when it came to the inside space, we have a high demand for meeting rooms, conference rooms, because of the nature of our work. And so we needed still that sense of privacy, but everything needed to flex. We decreased our footprint by over 50%. And we knew we had to use every square inch a lot more efficiently. So we've got a lot more furniture that we can move around, and it sort of flexes in different ways. We've got more things on wheels than we used to, like screens and whiteboards. We've got remote chargers because people need power all over the whole space. And so those are ways that we made it simple for people to come in, because we don't have dedicated workspaces where you're like plug into your docking station and have all of your cords. And so we've got lockers now so people can keep the things that they need, but also come and go and not feel like, oh, shoot, I forgot my crap and now coming into the office is hard. So we did have to think about it differently than we did when everybody drove, left their stuff, and sort of lived between the hours of 8 and 6 in the office.
How did employees accept this new environment? My guess is the kind of work you do, they probably were on board with it. Did you have any trouble selling the concept to employees?
No, I actually think employees are probably not the ones that need sold on it. It's like the executives who are spending their money of like, is our employees going to care? And I think my executive team would say we way overspent per square foot compared to where we came from. And I think the question for us is like, was the return on investment there? Are we getting the cultural engagement? Are we getting people into the office? I don't think any of us want our employees to come to the office because we tell them they have to. Mm-hmm. That's like the worst possible outcome. Mm-hmm. I think we want them to be there because they feel compelled to be there. They know their work is better when they're there. They like the people that are there. They like the way that the space supports their work. And so I felt like we had to create space that was like beckoning, where they were excited to get in their car, drive the like rainy 12 miles, park in the parking garage and walk in because it was better than they could create at home. And so I do think we're competing not just against other employers as we think about bringing people in, but we're competing against our employees' homes. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that in a way that compels them to want to participate in our cultures? Because we don't just need the extroverts. I'm the most extrovert in our office. And I turned into a little pile of dust during COVID because I just couldn't survive without the humans.
Yeah.
But how do we create an environment that is not just like a Wolf of Wall Street sales floor, like I'd like to be a part of every day, but also is really accommodating to people who are more introverted, who sort of need different workspaces. So we thought about all that when we were putting our space together.
And I'm sure this new space is a key part of your equation when it comes to attracting and keeping talent, which everyone is in a war for talent now across all industries. How is that? How are you finding the talent you need?
I don't know that any CEO can honestly answer that, yes, they're finding all the talent they need right now. But what I'll say that we took our next level, our space, is that I mentioned earlier, our purpose as a company is to foster growth in people and business so that they can change the world. I believe business is sort of training camp for life. I also, as about a year and a half ago, our leadership team was sitting around a table and we said, how are we going to know if we're doing this? It's a noble thing to say that you want growth for the clients you work for the partners you have, for the businesses that are in your sphere of influence, and for the people. Like that is a noble thing to say. How will we know if we've done it? And so we created a statement for ourselves that says we will write 1,000 stories of growth by 2029. So we said, all right, well, how are we going to know that we did that? And so we have this section in our office, if you come and see it, you're welcome to, where we have these growth journals. There's 10 journals with 100 pages each. And on each of them will be a story of growth that we will actually go in and write. And then we have these little coins that say 1,000 stories on them that you get to take as this reminder of no matter where life takes you, on that moment you chose growth. And if you choose to do that every single time in life, there's an amazing impact that happens in the world when each of us choose the hard path of growth. Mm-hmm. And then we commissioned an artist, his name is Cameron Moberg, to come in, and he's a graffiti street artist. And he painted this just like incredible bird, it's huge, in our office as a reminder that each of us have to remember to take flight. Growth requires us spreading our wings and sort of choosing forward momentum. And then his tail wraps around and creates this just like beautiful, crazy collage of faces and textures and objects. And in the wake of our lives, when we individually choose growth, is this amazing textured experience of people and organizations and things that get impacted when we each individually do. So in our space, we committed to that mission by paying somebody to come in and help us visually interpret that. And I think that, having spent such a huge part of my career alongside artists, you learn that people experience and learn and remember different ways. Some are auditory, some are visual, some are kinesthetic. And so we've had different ways that our team has been able to engage in this idea of our mission. And I felt like so many of us are visual learners. We needed to create a visual artifact in our space that said, every day we come in, I don't care how great or crappy it is, we are on a journey individually of growth. And when we do that, we collectively will be on a journey of growth. Mm-hmm. And this bird is like our mascot and our reminder of the bigger picture of what's happening.
So what you're describing seems as though that's you're using your space to kind of tell your brand story.
Totally. So when prospective employees come in, when prospective clients come in, we don't just like pull out this like crappy piece of paper from our pocket and say like, I just thought of this. It's like, no, do you see our commitment to this? And I do find myself as a leader working to be more articulate about our purpose, working to be more intentional about the way that we actually resource what we say we're going to do. Because this generation, and I don't even think it matters what age, the people who our talents are at play in the marketplace today understand they have options. And so they're looking for bigger stories to be a part of. And I think we have jobs to do as leaders, as brand leaders, as culture creators, to make sure we're not just keeping that inside of handbooks and brand books, that we're bringing those to life in really, really real ways for employees.
You mentioned the impact the space has on employees, on prospective clients. Do you want, when a customer, partner walks into that space, do you want them to feel a certain way or have a certain vibe about what they're experiencing?
Yeah, I want them to feel like they want to stay. You know, we live at this intersection of like professionalism and creativity, where we do have to work inside the confines of business. You do need to have the confidence that I understand financial structures and P&Ls and your budgets and timelines. Like, you want to feel structure when you hire an agency or marketing company. And you also want to get a sense of, you have a way to think about things differently, that like you kind of know how to break the sound barrier in the way that you think about the world. And so I wanted our space to really embody the tension of those two aspects of our personality, of this disciplined, fundamental, financially sound, and also this sense of adventure, a search for the edges, this cry for flight and growth. How do those things play together? And so I wanted our space to really embody that kind of messiness of that tension. But it's not messy, it's very clean. Everybody's super anal about it. That's still. Right. Yeah, everybody washes their dishes when you move to a new office.
Right.
That is a fast fact. Hot take.
Oh, that's good. What you talk about partners and clients and customers, and certainly Business Furniture, this is their podcast, working with Business Furniture through this process, because you've got your ideas, they've got to meld with the partner on the other side. Talk about that whole process. You know,
they were such kind, gracious, collaborative partners with us. I actually laughed a little bit because my husband in a separate business was going through also a build out process. And I thought about, from a business furniture vendor in a partner perspective, would you rather sell furniture to my husband or to me? And I'm like, decidedly, they would rather sell furniture to my husband, because he's like, whatever you have is great. How short can we make this meeting? And I'm like, I care a lot about this, like a lot. And so they were so patient. They were so gracious. I remember walking into a meeting, they're like, we're going to make all these decisions by the end of the meeting. And I'm like, and if we don't, if we're not able to get there, how is that going to go? And so they were wonderful. They really met our needs. We were a high consideration client in the sense of we had a real vision for what we wanted to come to life. We'd not done this a lot of times, so it's not like we could say, and pull these, fabric samples. I'm sure they had to come to our office like one more time or maybe 3 more times than they'd like to drop off another chair sample. Yeah. But they were so kind, and I never felt that tension. So I'm projecting this because I was laughing. Yeah. I'm sure that PO went a lot faster with my husband.
Yeah.
But they were just so, and they brought great ideas, and they also really left room for our interpretation of how we wanted the brand to come to life. And we're just, I think, co-curated the space with us. I really felt like that. And I knew that was going to be a delicate balance, because I know design teams have their own worldview. I know that they know their inventory so much better than we ever will, and asking them to go back one more time. And so it was a delightful partnership, and I was really grateful for it.
One more question on culture. And that's, everybody talks about creating a culture and the importance of it coming from the top down and then having that message from the CEO. Are there, and you've mentioned several examples during our conversation here, but are there things, is there advice you would give to CEOs or senior leaders as they embark on that process? Is there a magic to really instilling that culture in a workplace with a workforce and making it stick?
My observation, both in leading my organization through a lot of almost 20 years, and I probably have worked on 150 different brand plans in my career, is that a culture cannot possess a trait that is not first visible in the leader or its leadership. It will never do it. And so an example in my world is that we had a very unaccountable culture. I am unaccountable. I hate it about myself, but it's true. And so not until I got someone on the leadership team that was very empowered, who is highly accountable, did our culture reflect accountability. There's 1,000 different values that you could pick, but if there's something that you're not seeing in your organization that you know is critical to your success, it's likely it's not possessed by someone on your team, and you've got to empower that value by putting kind of like power and endorsement behind a person. We as individual CEOs or presidents cannot possibly be a fully heightened, completed, mature version of every value in the universe. You've got to know where your blind spots are and find the right people around you, not just in the technical competency of your business, but in the value set as well, if you want to have a complete set. So that would be my advice. Your organization will never be able to reflect something that isn't first embodied, contained inside the leadership team.
You talked about earlier that balance of business and personal life, work-life balance. In your view, Tiffany, how have things shifted in that regard for executives, for business leaders over the course of the past 2 years in this pandemic environment we've been in?
Yeah, I think the idea of work-life integration is like way more present. The number of, I had my 4th daughter in 2020, and the number of video calls she's been on is super high. And it's great. I still get stuff done. I'm able to be present with her when I need to be. And I think a lot of people can say that about their dogs, the back wall of their, spare bedroom, whatever it looks like. And so I think there's just a lot more grace for the things that we found matter a little less than we thought they did. This like kind of rote compartmentalization of things. And I just find like we can find forward progress maybe in and around more messiness than we thought we could. And to me, I think my family has been served more completely in that way. I think that I know more about my employees' sort of extended experiences and things they're involved in this sort of modern way of integrating work and life. And I think it's a net positive for us to sort of pull down the veil of perfection and compartmentalization and to sort of present ourselves as whole people in our work.
Is there a next big thing? What's next? We're coming out of the pandemic finally. You're in your new space. You're getting assimilated in that post-COVID environment. What's next for Tiffany Sauder? What's next for Element 3?
At Element 3, I don't know that we've talked about this publicly at all, but one thing is we're doing a homecoming event, and business furniture is part of it. I hated the idea of doing an open house because I think it like celebrates the space, and the space is just like this inanimate object that sort of matters but sort of doesn't. But our ability to move into this amazing neighborhood, this amazing space, is really a celebration of all the people that have been part of our success journey. And so we decided to call it a homecoming, to invite past employees, current and past clients, partners along the way, and just really celebrate this next stage for our company. I feel like as we earn more, achieve more, have more impact, we have more responsibility to give and sort of create environment of growth for the people around us. So our homecoming event is very exciting. That's happening later this month. For Element 3, we think a lot about the client experience. If you look at the way agencies and consultancies operate, it's kind of the same as it was 40 years ago. And so we're doing a lot of thinking right now about how we innovate on the client experience. How do we use technology thoughtfully? How do we reduce this sort of like opacity that exists between agencies and clients and bring, where your pizza is at in its sort of stage of being birthed at Domino's. you want to know the same thing about your marketing projects and where things are at and where invoices are in circulation. And so we're thinking a lot about client experience and how do we not just disrupt in the work we do, but in the way we work. Mm-hmm. And then for me personally, my job is sort of keep creating space behind me for the next generation of leaders. I've launched a podcast in the pandemic, which I think lots of people did, called Scared Confident. That has been a real rich journey for me to share my own journeys of growth and what's it look like to be a CEO, mom of four, and all the things I've learned in that journey. And so, I do love growth. I bought a little podcast company. And so I'm just continuing to play and learn and surround myself with people that are at new levels so that I can continue to see the horizon. And
you're doing it very well. Tiffany Sauder is the CEO of Element 3. Tiffany, it's been a real treat to have you on the podcast. Congratulations on everything you have accomplished and continue to accomplish, and good luck going forward.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the More Than a Chair podcast. It is a special series celebrating Business Furniture's 100 years in business. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
For more on how you can reimagine your workspace and help bring your teams back to better, come and see us over at businessfurniture.net.